My manager banned everyone from working one single minute past 5 o'clock. He thought he was saving money. 2 weeks later the company lost a $2 million client and my manager was the one standing in the parking lot explaining why. I worked as a project coordinator for a mid-sized software company that built custom logistics systems for shipping companies. My job was simple on paper. Keep projects on schedule, keep clients happy, keep the developers organized. In reality my job was chaos control. We had one client, a massive shipping company on the East Coast, that was worth more than every other client combined. Losing them would have gutted the whole department. My manager, a guy named Roland, had been hired 6 months earlier from another company. He loved rules. He loved control. He loved standing near the break room with his arms crossed watching people work like he was some kind of prison guard. And he hated one thing more than anything else in the world: overtime pay. Roland decided that our department was spending too much on overtime. Instead of asking why people were staying late, instead of asking if we were understaffed or if deadlines were unrealistic, he made an announcement in a team meeting that would change everything. Effective immediately, nobody is allowed to work past 5 o'clock. Not 5:01. Not 5:30. 5 o'clock sharp, everyone logs off, shuts down, and goes home. Anyone caught working late without approval will be written up. People tried to explain. I tried to explain. I told him our biggest client, the shipping company, needed constant attention because their system integration was live and any delay could cause real financial damage on their end. Roland just smiled, the fake corporate smile people use when they think they're smarter than you. He said, and I remember this exactly, if the client needs something done, it should be done during business hours. We are not a company that rewards poor time management with unpaid heroics. I wanted to ask him whose time management he was talking about, since the deadlines were set by him and the client, not by us. But I kept quiet. Because I had learned something in my 3 years at that company. When a manager makes a rule that's stupid, you do not fight it. You follow it. You follow it perfectly. So I did. The very next day, the shipping client sent an urgent request. Their system was throwing errors during a live shipment tracking update, something that needed immediate attention because delayed shipments meant real trucks sitting in real parking lots losing real money every single hour. It was 4:45 in the afternoon. I looked at the clock. I looked at the email. I looked at Roland's new policy pinned to the office bulletin board like it was the Constitution. I sent a calm, professional email back to the client. I told them our team was aware of the issue and would begin working on it first thing the next business day at 9 a.m., in accordance with company work hour policy. I copied Roland on the email so there would be no confusion about why we weren't responding immediately. At 5 o'clock, I shut down my computer, grabbed my bag, and walked out the door with everyone else. For the first time in months, I left work exactly on time. It felt strange. Almost peaceful. The next morning I walked in and Roland was already standing by my desk, his face pale, his tie slightly crooked like he had gotten dressed in a hurry. He asked me why I didn't stay and fix the client issue last night. I told him I was simply following his new policy. No work past 5 o'clock without approval, and he hadn't approved anything. He said that policy wasn't meant for emergencies like this. I asked him where that exception was written down. He didn't have an answer, because there wasn't one. He had never mentioned emergencies. He had never mentioned client deadlines. He had made an absolute rule, and I had followed it absolutely. That morning the client called, furious. Their shipment tracking had been down for almost 15 hours. Trucks had been delayed at 3 different distribution centers. They estimated their financial loss at around $80,000 for that single night, and they wanted answers immediately. Roland tried to explain it was a miscommunication. The client asked him directly, "So your company decided a client emergency wasn't important enough to handle outside business hours?" Roland stumbled through an answer that made things worse instead of better. That was just the beginning. Because once I realized Roland's rule applied to everyone equally, I made sure everyone followed it just as perfectly as I did. Every developer, every support technician, every single person on my team started shutting down their computers at exactly 5 o'clock, no matter what was happening. Half-finished code commits were left half-finished. Support tickets sat untouched overnight. Nobody dared stay even 5 minutes late, because Roland had made it very clear that violators would be written up, and nobody wanted a write-up over a rule they didn't even agree with. Within 1 week, the shipping client's system had 3 more incidents that went unaddressed until the next morning. Each time, the client's trust dropped a little more. Each time, Roland had to explain to upper management why response times had suddenly become so slow, when just weeks earlier our team had a reputation for being fast and reliable. Upper management started asking questions. They pulled server logs. They pulled email timestamps. They saw exactly what had happened. A policy banning work past 5 o'clock, put in place by Roland, and a client emergency that got delayed because of that exact policy, with my email as proof that I had explicitly warned him about the consequences before it even happened. 2 weeks after Roland created his rule, the shipping client scheduled an emergency call with our company's vice president. They said plainly that if response times didn't improve immediately, they would begin evaluating other vendors for their next contract renewal, a renewal worth close to $2 million annually. The vice president called an emergency meeting with Roland. I wasn't in the room, but people who were told me his face went white when he found out how much money was actually at stake. He tried to blame the team for not showing enough initiative. But the emails didn't lie. My email was sitting right there in the thread, professional, calm, and impossible to argue with. It proved I followed his policy exactly as written, with no room for interpretation. The vice president asked him one simple question. Why would you create a policy that ignores our biggest client's operating hours? Roland didn't have an answer, because there wasn't one. He had made the rule to save a few $1,000s in overtime pay, and it nearly cost the company $2 million in annual revenue. By the end of that week, Roland's overtime ban was quietly reversed. No announcement, no meeting, no acknowledgement that it had ever caused a problem. Just a short message in our internal system stating that employees may work reasonable overtime as needed for client emergencies, with manager notification. Roland was placed on a performance improvement plan less than a month later. Word around the office was that upper management had lost confidence in his judgment after the incident, especially after seeing how close we came to losing our biggest account over something that could have been avoided with one simple sentence added to his original rule, an exception for emergencies. 3 months later, Roland was gone. Nobody made a big announcement about it. He just stopped showing up one Monday, and a new operations manager took over our department, one who actually asked the team what we needed before making any new rules. The shipping clients stayed with us in the end. Their new contract came with stricter service guarantees, but it also came with more resources and long overdue support staff, changes that should have happened long before any of this started. I still think about that email sometimes, the one I sent at 4:45 that afternoon. Calm, professional, and completely true. I never raised my voice. I never broke a single rule. I simply did exactly what I was told to do, nothing more and nothing less. Sometimes the loudest form of protest is silence, followed perfectly by the rules someone else created without thinking them through.